country and, of course, the political space. Of course, earlier today, members of the opposition led a protest to the INEC headquarters in Abuja, heavily monitored by security operators. I mean, it was a peaceful protest, but today we'd like to, tie that to another conversation that we would like to have this evening. Well, my name is Favor.
And my name is Informa Wabufo.
Thank you so much once again for joining us. Well, Nigeria is preparing for another election cycle, but this time something feels a little bit different. The opposition headline recently reported that the federal government has set aside a staggering 135 billion naira. This money is not for roads, it is not for hospitals, and it is not for schools, but for election related lawsuits ahead of 2027. I guess that will be a time for us to pause and think about that for a minute. So, what does it really say about a democracy when it budgets not just for voting but for fighting over the results that will eventually come up from an election? Is this a sign of preparedness? Because this has been the question that people are asking, or a quiet admission that the process itself may, once again be contested, most likely chaotic and widely disputed. Now, from 2015, if we would like to compare when power changed hands with, relatively minimal legal drama, to 2019 when, trust began to thin, to 2023 where the courts became almost an extension of the ballot box. Nigeria's elections, have steadily moved from polling units to courtrooms. It's almost as if the battle does not end at the polling units. It's almost as if the people's decision or the people's choices does not count anymore. And today, we are not longer reacting to election disputes. We are planning for them, and the government is leading in that. So the big question is: are Nigerian elections now a two-stage process? We have the voting day, and then we have the court judgment day. And even more importantly, are we investing in democracy or in the consequences of its failure? These are some of the questions that people are asking, and rightfully so. And we would like to explore all the angles there is to this conversation to understand whether this even makes sense. Because I try to look back on a previous administration as to whether this was actually budgeted under the previous administration, and I understand that it was actually budgeted, right? But it wasn't given. It wasn't specific. The specificity that came with this particular fund, this has to be the first. On the previous administration, you will see judiciary. You would see funds like this come on the judiciary, INEC budget, and all of that. It was absorbed within budgets on the judiciary and INEC and all that. But with this election that we're looking forward to in 2027, the federal government is specifically budgeting for post-election litigations, and Nigerians are asking why that is. Is that an admission that we are expecting, almost all the results that will emerge from that election to be contested? Well, would like to, proceed with this conversation, and Dr. Basi is in the studio with us to help us, bring a little bit of clarity to the confusion surrounding these very developments. Dr. Basi, glad to have you on the program. Good evening.
Good evening, Favor. Good evening, Informa. Good evening, our listeners.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Clement weather.
Oh, I understand what you said.
Mhm.
Right? All right. Well, 135 billion, for post-election litigations, and you would understand why this is generating a lot of buzz and a lot of reactions. Because for a lot of people, it is a clear indication that INEC is not prepared, or INEC most likely will not run a free, fair, and credible elections. And so that is why the federal government is making provisions for post election litigations. So, what are your thoughts about that?
I'll start this way. When people say that this democracy we're practicing will never develop any developing nation, it looks as if it's a myth. But when you take a look at the outcome, of um, the processes we have, you discover that this our electoral system is not just waste of money. Is huge. It's bogus. It doesn't really translate to improving the lives of people on the street. Well, when we talk about 135 billion, some of us may not really understand what that means. But let me translate it in a better perspective. States like you know Ekiti, some other states, including a few states in the southeast, may not have gotten their total emoluments per annum. I mean, paying all the salaries of the workers every month for the next 12 months in the state of 135 billion. Because some states just have their
On an annual base.
yes, some
Okay.
states have their budgets, slightly above, 135 billion. But majority of the states, including the recurrent and capital expenditure, if you track their budget performance in a year, it's less than 200 billion naira. So when you say that you are bringing 135 billion, for post-election litigation, for some of us, somebody will begin to ask, oh, in the first instance,
Mm.
if the amount of money that should have been used in paying the civil servants in the state was just utilized in paying for services of less than probably 2,000 lawyers, for over 6 months, I mean, why do we go into such frivolous expenditure?
Mm.
That's number one. Number two, just like you alluded, it's clear that the implication has two, consequences. It's either INEC has projected that look, there might be a lot of storms that will come out of this election. Right now, that people are becoming more and more aware, and they are not prepared to leave any stone unturned.
Mm.
Or those of them in the, those of the legal team in INEC decided to, put their hands again in the booty, to see how much they could take away from the electoral process. I mean, the whole of 2027 election budget is roughly less than 1 trillion naira, and many of us have been querying why this humongous budget, for our electoral cycle. And the whole of our electoral process should be, overhauled. The money being spent is so huge, and you discover that once an election cycle comes, the next 6 months after the legal issue, the president or the governor begins to think about another election.
Mm.
So when is it when is the time left for governance? When are people going to get the so-called dividend on democracy? So what you see, or what I can project, is that what we are practicing is a situation where people get into power, steal money, harvest some money, give some professionals at different ends, and then we go into the next election to the
Mm.
detriment of development of the system. So if you look at it critically, one would say, is INEC actually prepared for this election? If we are prepared for this election, why are you preparing, such amount of money as post-election litigation?
Litigation.
Now, because if the election is transparent, if election is clear, visible to everybody that you lost the election, you have no reason going to court. I mean, but it becomes an issue where you go to court only when you look at the fact that I have a case to prove.
Mm.
That's number one. Number two, we are returning back. In fact, it's becoming worse because what it means is that INEC knows that whatever it gets will be validated in court.
Mm.
So it is better we now hire um, tougher lawyers to help us validate our results in court.
I was
So
looking up something and I realized because I was trying to understand whether this is the very first, if this is the very first we are having. But we have always made provisions for election-related litigations. It has always existed in Nigeria, but they were not this,
humongous.
explicit or as humongous as what we have now.
Yes.
And you will not see this money is mapped out for post-election litigation.
It's always
Yes, it's always
absorbed into the
yes,
electoral.
under like
This time
allocations,
around, it's
judiciary
coming.
budgets and all. And apart from that, one would have thought the Electoral Act of 2022 and this amended Electoral Act would have addressed all of these challenges. Even before this election, this Electoral Act came to be prior to 2015, when the trust began to thin and all of that. We did not have this much post-election litigations and all that. So how do we begin to really look at that?
We are beginning to have the sense of human beings. We can take a look at what's happening in ADC. Who are the members of ADC? These are aggregation of APC, PDP that are aggrieved. Those that have tested power. They have divided themselves into two. One group in ADC, the other group in APC. Now, they are so aggrieved that they are ready to rock the boat. And the president is so aggrieved, he's ready to rock the boat too. Now, the only option they have is to go to court. So you can see why the government is interested, in providing humongous amount of money, post-election litigation. In fact, don't be surprised that all the sons in Nigeria will be placed under the federal INEC payroll. Don't be surprised that they will be placed under INEC payroll. All the lawyers that could actually go into electoral litigation may be placed under federal government payroll. And then when you win an election, they might be looking for a son, to follow you to court. When INEC now offers them, this money comes from service votes. So it is easy for federal government to, to not to go to INEC, to get people that will, defend INEC in court. So all the federal government needs to do is to place a roll call of all the lawyers that are going into litigation and offer them opportunity of being consultants or lawyers to INEC. And they're all paid. When you pay them off, who would you now use as opposition? That becomes a big issue. And that is my own thinking that the federal government wants to do. Because the math is mind-boggling. I mean, we are not talking about primary healthcare self-management. We're not talking about road network. We're not even talking about electricity, which we are now having a hotel will work. We're not talking about developmental strike. We're talking about money. I guess if you know even a court. So following our inability to conduct free, fair, and credible election. That's what it simply implies. If we do free, fair, and credible election, I don't think anybody will go to court. So the government is actually preparing. The same way you could see the handwriting of across all board. We have seen a lot of people, collapsing their political life where under our mandate to stand or your mandate to stand. So I think that's what is actually happening. And if care is not taken over the next few years, you may see that people are now will be receiving certificates that they are now litigants or they are now solicitors to INEC. And if you go across board, every lawyer will be solicitor. So when you finish an election, they'll ask you who is the sign leading you to court. You will not see any. Tell me what's going on. So it's you now see that the corruption is on the increase and the divesting and diversifying. Coming up I won't be surprised tomorrow if I hear that my colleagues have actually gotten up to say all the cases, doctors that will manage that they mapped out money for violence, assault, for anybody that will be wounded in the electoral process, post-election medical treatment care. Nobody will be surprised if we hear that. Or post-election sanitation fee. It's becoming so ridiculous. And you will begin to wonder, this is a country where we are resource constrained. When I sit down to look at geopolitics and look at what Iran, a country of over 90 million, has been able to achieve over the last 40 years, and the kind of precision missile they hit, with all the humongous, restriction, with all the humongous trade, restriction imposed on them for almost 40 years or 40 something years. But they were able to utilize within themselves to make, including their cars, the missiles, and a lot of things they've been doing. I wonder, how do we now say that country is not progressing? How do we now begin to say that the country is authoritarian? Are they not better off than us? A country that you could see that under this constraint, economic constraint, their children, they have to for electricity. They are doing this thing by themselves. And we still call them authoritarian dictators. I mean, are we not crazy?
All right.
Can we begin to talk about spending money on frivolities instead of talking about developmental stride that the nation will have? That's the simple truth. 135 billion, budgeted for waste. I call it waste because if you conduct election free and fair, credibly, people will congratulate the opponents and go home.
All right. I had to, just like Favor said, I had to look at the 2023 budget, and I noticed that over the INEC, what was spent on post litigation was around 3 billion naira.
Yes,
3 billion naira. So
they've
we are
been projecting
seeing,
less than 30, 20 billion altogether.
we are seeing like more than 4,000 increase. Yes,
1,000%
four
increase
thousand.
from
Yeah,
what it
from
was
what
before.
it was in 2023. But something Professor Patutomi said that caught my attention. He said that it is not the federal government that goes into elections; it is the individual candidates. So if President Tinubu is the one going into election 2027, I mean the money for post-election litigation should be coming from their pockets. And he also went on to say that if the budget is for INEC, then it should be in the INEC budget
Budget.
and not outside the budget. What are your thoughts on
I
this?
said clearly that for you to be in service wide vote, part of time is part of the system. So you understand that there's a crime going on. You there's some element of criminality going on there.
Mm.
Corruption is being, perpetrated or being in offing. That's the simple truth. So you understand clearly. Yes, I agree with you. INEC should have been considered on the front. But federal government wants it now to be, the money to be remitted directly from Accountant General's office, and in a more less open, transparent mechanism. When you put money in service wide vote, it means that nobody is like a pool. Nobody is actually in charge of the money. So if the federal government says, give Mr. A money, he goes to service wide vote, and you give him. And I am looking at it from that perspective. Federal government may be budgeting to, get all the lawyers in Nigeria enrolled and enlisted to defend INEC. That's the truth. And that's the only way you can explain that to me. The truth of the matter remains that it is not only individuals that go to court. In the last, in the present case of ADC litigation, we saw the guy dragging INEC to court.
Mm.
So INEC is a trusted party in the matter. In fact, in all the post-election litigation, INEC is dragged. Invariably, federal government or Nigerian, let me say, government of the federation is dragged. But the issue here is that, just like Riley read, we had not expected this money to exceed 5 billion naira. Let's say, put on quote, the inflation and the LOB. And we expected it that the 3 billion which was initially spent should have been reduced, because if you have a transparent election, less rank or would emanate from the process.
Right.
So we had expected it to be reduced. But now, 430 something billion in service wide votes, which means it could become first line charge if the president decides.
Mm.
That's the implication. The president can decide to say, okay, give the lawyers their money, give the legal team their money, Attorney General of the Federation, make sure that whatever INEC requires, give them the money. And then another budget, another corrupt process is opened up again. So it's ridiculous, honestly speaking, I must tell you. Many of us are not comfortable with that kind of among us. And what it simply implies is that, when you have this level of, impunity at the top echelon of the country, you're actually allowing it to cascade down. Of course, governors can decide to come up tomorrow to say, okay, fine, we are taking a look at what the federal government did. The state government can equally help out in that kind of manner. After all, if there's nobody, I mean, nobody's going to query them.
I think I'm thinking this covers the presidency, the National Assembly election, and the governorship elections as well.
Yes, for INEC on INEC side.
On INEC's
On INEC
side,
side,
right?
yes. But for the
And they are representing, the ruling party in this case,
no
or people
no
who
no
won the
no no
election,
no no yes
regardless
people
of regardless of the political
yes
party,
yes people who won the election,
regardless of the political
political
party.
party.
All right.
But my own take is very simple. I don't think it's a good signal to an average Nigerian. Now, 135 billion is budgeted for post-election crisis. If we have INEC said about 800 billion naira for their projects, for their electoral process, 135 billion, which is almost going to close to 1/5 for that amount of money. That's about 20% of INEC budget. I mean, it is humongous. It is huge.
But just like every other institution, INEC has a legal department, and one would have thought that for cases like this, the lawyers should come from their own legal department rather than outsourcing.
No, it won't, because if you have roughly 300 and something House of Rep members under litigation, remember INEC electoral process has a time frame, and you have them let's say you have out of National Assembly, you have over 200, cases in court going on at the same time. You don't expect the tiny lawyers, number of lawyers in INEC offices to, to do that work. How many are there? They won't be able to represent INEC. So they must consult. That's true. They must, as per consulting, they must consult. That's number one. Number two, I don't think you see any son working under federal government. I don't think it's possible. Because how much are they being paid? And we know when it comes to the top echelon, there's this hierarchy in judiciary. You know, and that hierarchy goes with knowledge, it goes with experience and exposure. And in legal profession, that is saddled within the body of science. So you see that when this issue come up, INEC hire science who are private individuals to defend them, and that is true. So they must get lawyers outside of their in-house legal department to defend them.
Do you think that a real-time electronic transmission of results would have solved all this problem? Do you think if we had a situation where the elections had to be transmitted in real time, there wouldn't have been need for because the election will be conducted in such a manner that it will be transparent enough for anybody to see who won and lost.
No, real time is an outcome, not a process. The problem is the process. I had always maintained if you come to a polling unit where party A is dominant over party B, and then party A has a lot of money and a lot of manpower dominating party B, and party B didn't have proper representative. Um, if the electoral officer colludes with party A, you might hear during the voting or counting, you might hear something like 110, 1,000, 2,220, 2,220, and the opposition party 3. That is a process. This process is flawed. And the person picks up a paper in the presence of a camera and writes 2,220 for the winning party and 3 for the opposition and post it real time. We all sit down in Enugu and clap that the election is transparent. But the process is faulty. I don't know if you get what I'm going to point out. I've always maintained that the way and manner the result is transmitted is just to increase hasten the speed. But the process must be transparent enough to determine a good outcome. There are countries that have gotten clear, transparent elections that are not using electronic transmission. And even if you use electronic transmission to get a faulty result, it will still be litigated.
No, Dr. Basewe, prior to 2023 elections, right? I mean, a lot of people became part of the 2023 electoral process because of, possible electronic transmission of results in real time. Matter of fact, when I was at my polling unit to vote, after we were done voting, we told the core member, "You're not going anywhere until this result is uploaded." We had to even hotspot the machine until he uploaded the result. And we also covered a couple of places, and that was the case. You could see that Nigerians were actively involved in the electoral process as a result of the fact that they wanted that election to be transmitted in real time. I don't know if this is what I mean. So, and we do not need so much, 5G or even 4G network for
You're
that
not
to
getting
happen.
what I want to. Let me give you a typical example.
But because you're saying that it's the process, anything could happen with the
Let
process
me give you an
of
example.
that
Why you are
election.
saying this is that where you are, you did that election. There is almost 50-50 chances of people protecting their votes. So there is equal, opposition power. Let me give you a typical example.
You're saying that does not apply to other places?
Yes, Ireti Ginkibe was announced the winner of Abuja FCT senatorial seat when the uploaded result was 49%. The opposition did not contest that result because he lost. He knew he lost, right? Now, everybody knew they had the results. In Sokoto, Zamfara, the opposition had no agent. So if these results were uploaded in real time, do you know what was uploaded? That is the point I'm trying to look at. Let's look at the last election in FCT. The results were uploaded in real time. The opposition was unable to field even agents in the 6th municipal council.
Okay, so that process you're talking about, how do we begin to address it?
First of all, the political parties. Now, I'm happy the ADC, had, demonstration in Abuja today. I'm happy. Part of the process is to put, heat on the government. The ruling party today, in 2013, They didn't allow Jonathan to sleep. They had to put pressure on Jonathan. And when the election time came, they had their results. It was not uploaded in real time. They had their result. They had their result. Jonathan did not allow the result to be, the counting to be finished. He had congratulated the winner because they had their situation room. They had electoral officers across the federation. They saw they won the election. Did they need any real time transmission? There was no real time. Jonathan to tell you how this electoral process is is managed by politicians. Jonathan saw the result before INEC announced the result. So Jonathan congratulated you. What does that imply? PDP had their agents across the federation that gave them real time results. The APC had the agents across the federation that gave them real time results. And the APC knew they won the election. PDP knew they won the election. They didn't wait for INEC to announce the result. Jonathan congratulated, Buhari.
Mm.
It wasn't real-time transmission. With all the shenanigans that was done in that election, but Jonathan knew, look, the result coming from the field, I lost. Let me go home quietly.
Because it's Jonathan.
And that I'm trying to point out to you. Now,
some other politicians.
No, when you are,
let it slide.
You see, when you are, no, you if you watch the electoral process, if you remember 2023 election, I kept on saying that the APC, the opposition party, Labour Party, and PDP, they don't have anything to say. If you look at where P2B contested, it was Rivers, Benue State. And those places we argue, I told you they were just elementary. What happened in Northwest, you don't know. You are blinded. What happened in Northeast, you don't know because you don't have the results. You are waiting for IREV report. The APC did not wait for IREV in 2013. They had the raw results. They had to hold the process to account. That's what I'm trying to point out. I wish the ADC persons today should be able to put such pressure and hold the system to account. So that if you lose election by 4 p.m., the opposition would have known they won or they lost. In Osun State, I still use this as an example. The first time Adeleke lost the election, the time he came the second time, and then by 7 p.m. on the election day, Davido tweeted, guys, just cool down. It's like we had won the election. INEC was still doing the accounting, but the situation room had told them via whatever all their agents across the state that they won the election.
But same thing happened in Edo State and APC, PDP still lost.
In Edo State, like I said from day one, I said PDP was going to lose in Edo State. Unfortunately, when you are bringing out something, you have to know what to bring. And unfortunately, in Edo State, we saw Obaseki was up against a very serious issue, including those that would have helped him. So we don't even know whether what he saw as a result was actually authentic result. That's the issue, because at the end of the day, Obaseki had to become the returning officer. He went to INEC office. So for me, the issue I'm trying to point out here is that the opposition should be able to hold this government. What they did in Abuja, I think today or yesterday, I like that. Can they replicate it across the federation? They shouldn't be docile, watching the government in power ravaging everywhere, and they wait for them in 2019, 2027 to tell us that they rigged the election. I mean, stop the rigging right now. Become an opposition right now.
Okay. Given what we have seen over the years, is more people believe that outcomes of elections are now settled in courtrooms other than the ballot
that's the bad
box.
one.
Though, how much of an impact do you think this will have on our democracy going forward, especially now that we are now normalizing this particular action?
It's a terrible situation, I must tell you. When we all depend on the court, to give us the winners of the election. I mean, I wonder if we begin to use court to determine who becomes our PGs, the class monitors, and so on. These are electoral processes, SUG leadership, that are done transparently, and people don't even argue. We go to Oboe today, elect their leaders. Today, those of them in Timbuktu have elected their leaders. Nobody, after the election, everybody, drank champagne. Can't we do something better? Because what we're trying to do is to, of course, which is what the ruling party will want. They want a situation whereby the populace will have no faith in the electoral process. If you have an electoral party, it helps the winning, the government is in power. If people have no confidence in the electoral process, it simply means they won't come out for election. And then the government in power will mobilize the so-called sycophants that actually with them to win election. So it's going to cast doubt on the electoral process, and the populace most likely will turn out, have voter party, I wouldn't be interested in voting anymore. And that is where my problem is. When you have budget this humongous amount of money, you have actually saying, I mean, we know we are going to go to court, but we have what it called,
What it takes.
what it takes to make sure, whether it is by technical or anything, we are going to defeat you in the court. And I begin to wonder which, which parties will have 135 billion budget for, litigation in Nigeria. I mean, it's crazy. I must tell you the truth.
All right, interesting. A lot of people are beginning to rate Professor Mopiton's tenure as INEC chairman worse than that of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Today, I mean, barely how many months in office, and you've had protests hitting you. And I mean, we've also seen, people accuse him of being an appendage of the ruling All Progressives at Congress. Do you, you know, have any confidence in INEC under the leadership of Professor Joash Amopitan?
I don't have confidence in umpires, even in football. As well as and as advanced as football in terms of refereeing, we've noticed that we have linesmen, we have to make sure that the referee does not compromise, and we still see referee compromise. But then what happens is that the opposition should be able to put the government in power in check. So I think it is too early, to rate um, the, the the electoral chairman. But more importantly, political parties should be able to conduct themselves. You don't expect a legal entity like INEC, to disobey the law. More especially, I'm talking with reference to what happened between the decision of leadership of ADC.
Mm.
When they began that their takeover, somebody like me, I was on this studio. I said, if Ekichuku has some boys who are in court, in fact, you saw that one today. The new group emerged as the leadership of ADC.
But his lawsuit was struck out, so he had
Who?
no merit.
I'm talking about the guys that we are
Ekichukwu.
calling. If Ekichuku is different.
Okay.
Remember, there are guys that said that the leadership of the last tenure expired in 2022.
Okay.
They were supposed to their matter in court today.
Hmm.
They are in court. Now, we've seen another man who was the deputy national chairman who suddenly decided that, look, whatever you saw there was a false document. That when these guys resigned, I did not resign, so I'm not the chairman.
But ADC has also put out a video showing that Nephew Gombe was present when the
No,
party
that's a video.
leadership.
No, what I'm trying to point out, if you go behind the scene,
Yes.
what was the problem? It's the same problem. What was the problem? In fact, behind the scene, it was said that Nephew was promised deputy national chairman after the reshuffling. And when they finished the reshuffling, they discarded him to zonal financial secretary. And the guy became annoyed. Again, aka Porokita. So the political parties should first of all make themselves, look at themselves very well. I always maintain, we might not say that APC is good.
Are you part of the people that believe that INEC's interpretation of that court order?
If a court has said
was
if
right?
a court has said that maintain status quo before, INEC has no option than to interpret it that way.
That's status quo antebellum.
Yes.
That the party should not have any leadership.
INEC, see, now INEC does not have, I remember INEC is a party to this suit.
Yes.
Get any lawyer, forget emotion. Get any lawyer to interpret it.
Oh, see, lawyers. Somebody like Femi Falana says, I mean, the
Has a
INEC
different-
has a different interpretation
interpretation.
to that.
That is his own.
Yeah.
Now, let go. For me, I don't think I see. Let me be frank.
Mm.
It has a leadership. That leadership has, today as we have, they have three factions.